Hi there everyone, my name is Mr. Kanagasabi.
Hi there everyone, my name is Miss Akhtar and we're both Year 3 teachers. And today we're going to be learning about summarising.
We are indeed looking at summarising, but also looking at putting things into chronological order. Now, chronological order means putting them in order of time when they happen. So from first, then next, until the last one, and so on.
So today's video is mostly for Year 3s, but it's suitable for anybody, so everybody can watch it. So today we're going to be listening to a story and we need to think about how we would summarise the story. Which bits are good to include in the story and maybe which bits should we maybe leave out?
Our first definition we're looking at is summarising. Something you're just going to make it a little bit shorter with the key parts of it. For example, news round is an example of summarising the news. The news might be really long at first, but news round get all the key points in that they need to. It makes it easy to understand and we don't get too jumbled up. Fun fact, miss, right? Chrono means it's Greek for time, or chrono. It comes from the word chronos, which is Greek for time.
I had no idea. Well, it's such an important skill to have as a reader. In a story, we need to track what's happening with all the characters, and being able to summarise helps us to understand and make sure that we're getting all the information about the characters in the story. Sometimes we read things, but it doesn't soak up and the words don't make sense. Being able to summarise helps children to make sure that you're following the story in a more clearer way. Okay then, Mr. Kanakasabi, I think it's time for a story. I've been writing a story about a bridge. Would you like to hear it?
Sure, I love storytime, mate.
Great. So now listen really carefully, because afterwards I want you to summarise it for me and tell me what the most important parts are. Do you think you can do that?
Oh, I'm ready, but are there children at home that get to do this as well?
Sure, they can join in with us and then they can have a chance to do the summarising themselves.
Okay, Miss Akhtar, let's hear this story.
Okay, you ready then?
I'm ready.
Okay. Once, in the heart of the jungle, there was a huge river, and the only way to cross it was over a thin rope bridge. It was strong enough, but it was very narrow. Animals from all over the forest had to use the bridge to get around. On this day, an elk walked up to one side of the bridge and stepped on. He was reading his newspaper and not really looking where he was going. And on the other side of the valley, a foul-tempered bear stomped onto the bridge, wanting to cross. The elk and the bear rushed over the bridge and met in the middle. Now, there was a problem. The elk and the bear were a little bit large and a little bit heavy, and their tummies bashed together. The elk tried to get around the bear, but he couldn't pass. The bear tried to squeeze around the elk, but it couldn't get past. Luckily, a chirpy raccoon wanted to cross too, and it snuck up behind the bear. "I've got a great idea if we just work together." But Squirrel didn't get to finish. Bear picked her up and boinked her on the head and threw her back onto the grass. Mean bear. A friendly rabbit tiptoed behind the elk and said, "Hi mate, if you just thought about it." But Rabbit didn't get to finish. Elk picked him up and kicked him onto the grass. The rabbit shouted, "Eat!" The elk and the bear were still stuck and started shouting at each other's faces, each calling each other silly names. But they didn't notice what was happening behind them. The raccoon and the rabbit had a plan to get rid of this obstruction. They got out their saws, which they kept in their pockets, and started sawing off one side of the ropes. They giggled as they did it, because revenge is sweet. Elk and Bear looked at each other in panic, and then they fell 14,000 feet into the river. Rabbit and Raccoon laughed at their solution and walked over to now even more narrow bridge, so narrow that they could use it safely, but big silly creatures like Elk and Bear could not. They both walked across and met in the middle. There was an awkward silence. Would they fight? Would they fall? Of course not. They were smart. Raccoon ducked his head down, Rabbit jumped over, and they both got on with their lives. The end.
Oh, miss, that was a brilliant story. I love that those harsh animals learned a valuable lesson. That is better when we work together.
So true, sir. Well, now, how about you summarise it?
Okay, I've got this. So, there was a rabbit and a raccoon. They both survived. They both had pockets, and the elk had a newspaper, and there was a bridge. Is that good?
Well, you are right, Mr. Kanakasabi, but when you're summarising, we need to make sure that we kind of organise our story a little bit. So it needs to be a little bit organised. So, Mr. Kanakasabi, what happened at the beginning of the story?
Okay, at the beginning of the story, we were in the jungle, and there was a huge elk and another huge bear, and they were trying to cross over a bridge.
Great. What happened then?
So the elk was distracted, and then bear got frustrated, and when they met in the middle, they had a bit of a problem, a bit of an issue, and they couldn't get past each other.
Great. What happened next?
They started to fuss. They argued with each other, and then a raccoon came along and tried to give them some advice. They didn't want to hear the advice. And then a rabbit came along and they wanted to give you advice as well, and then neither of them wanted to hear that either.
Great. And then what?
The rabbit and the raccoon, they decided to work together, and they tried to get the bear and the elk off the bridge. So they cut the ropes on either side, and the tiny bit of the bridge was left that they could go across.
Is that the end?
No, so the rabbit and the raccoon could cross safely. When they met in the middle, the raccoon ducked and the rabbit jumped over, and then they lived happily ever after.
And what about the bear and the elk?
Oh no, they were not pleased.
So, Mr. Kanakasabi, well done. So that's how we summarise. We don't just read the story again. We just need to make sure we take the important parts and use them and tell the shortened version. We put the events in chronological order to keep track of everything.
Yeah, that's it, miss. I think I understand it a bit better now. Is it alright if I share one of my stories with the children?
Yes, please.
Yeah? So, children, can you put your hands up like this for me? Stretch your fingers out like that. We're going to use our hand to count the different points in our summary. With my story, I want to see if we can summarise it into only 5 parts. Ready? In a strange and beautiful village, there was an enormous clock tower. The sound of ticking rang out day and night, but it didn't run on batteries or electricity. It was powered by a dance. At the top of the tower, a young girl danced and span gracefully, just like she had always done. As soon as she danced, the clock kept turning, and out of the window, she looked out at the village. The colour, the light, the life. But it was the balloons that she loved to see. As she danced, the sky filled with them, and they drifted up from the village. She really wanted to see the outside, and her curiosity overpowered her. So for the first time ever, she decided to go outside. She ran down the staircase, but when she stepped outside, everything was different. The sky was grey as stone. Silence became painful. The colour had gone, and the balloons stood still in the air. She looked around and returned sadly back upstairs. In the tower, she began once again to dance, and the colour came back. A single green balloon floated through her window, and she twirled it with it as life returned to the strange and beautiful village.
Wow, that was a great story, Mr. Kanakasabi.
Thanks, miss.
So, everybody, now it's your turn. Using Mr. Kanakasabi's story, let's see if you can write down a 5-part summary in chronological order. 5 things that you think that were important in the story. How did it begin? What happened in the middle? How did the story end?
That's it. Your teachers would love to see your 5-part summary. If you need to hear the story again, don't worry, you can just rewind me and listen to it all over again. So make sure you got your pencils ready, and you're going to summarise in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Pause your video now to give you more time to write your summary. Pause us and then unpause us when you've finished. We will be waiting.
Oh, thanks for unpausing us. My neck's killing me now, mate.
It is, isn't it? Thanks for unpausing us. and thanks for writing this interesting summary. As a little treat for finishing, now that you've experimented with the reading skill of summarising, you can watch a little animation. You can find the links in the description. These videos are found on a website called Literacy Shed. Teachers and parents might enjoy having a look at other animations. You can follow the links in the description to watch these short clips.
Thanks for being so brilliant today. We both loved teaching you.
Yes, we did. And what are you going to do now, Mr. Kanakasabi?
Now, miss, I think I might retire and read my book, The Word Collector by Peter H. Reynolds.
How weird. I was also going to go ahead and read my book, which is called The Heart and the Bottle by Oliver Jeffers.
Yeah, enjoy it, miss.
Enjoy, thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.